Thank you everyone for joining us for the second half of our Navigating the Enhanced User Interface webinar. I am Michelle McCarthy, VP of Revenue Operations.
I'm Stephanie Hay, the Director of Product Development.
And I am Aditya, the product owner for our SDS2's multi-year user experience modernization initiative. So welcome.
All right, so I'm going to turn my screen off here and let's just jump right into it. For this half of the webinar, we're going to give you a tour of the lightning mode in SDS2 modeling and talk about what we did and why, show you the new SDS2, and then wrap up with a live Q&A. So to start off, you can see we got the modeling interface here. Up at the upper right, we have an area, you see the word detailer there. That is where you can set up your roles in lightning mode. You've got your ribbon across the top that will have your different icons and tools available to you. The contextual toolbars will show up to the right of reports based on the items that you've clicked in the model. Over here on the left at number 4 is your pinned icons. So if there's a certain command or a tool that you use a lot and you don't want to look for it or don't want to wait for it to pop up on the contextuals, you can pin it so it always stays visible to you over on the left-hand side. Below that little line there is where the recent commands pop up. And so those will kind of fluctuate based on what commands you're invoking in SDS2 and just repopulate as you use that. So combined with a couple of things that we've got here, including the search and help, that can be a really, really powerful tool. And I think we'll get into that here a little bit further on. But back up here at number 6, we've got the help icon, which will take you to the SDS2 help documentation. And you also have a search bar. So just like you could search the home screen when you were searching for project setup items, you can actually search commands inside of SDS2 modeling in the lightning mode. Moving on, we've got number 7 here, and this is the tile bar. This keeps tiles at hand. And for those of you who may not know what tiles are in SDS2, this allows you to have split windows in your modeling space that you can select across. So it can really help with some complex modeling. And just having those little icons there available to you make it a lot more usable, easier to flip back and forth between a couple of tiles, turn them on and off. So it just makes them a lot easier to use than they were in versions past. Down at the bottom of the screen, you've got number 8, your information area. This is that status bar that would tell you where your cursor was in the XYZ, or it might tell you what a command was doing. So that's located at the bottom here now, along with your selection filter, your depth check, the status display. I want to talk a little bit about this area because we moved some of these things that were at the top down to the bottom to conform a little bit more with other products that people are used to using, like Revit or AutoCAD, where they would have that status and feedback at the bottom of the screen. So this is a usability thing that we want to help new users get used to using SDS2. It is a little bit of a change, I think, for existing users. But I would say you get used to it. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of work getting used to it, but it is something you get used to and it becomes useful and then it stays out of your way at the top.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely bringing that when you're used to running another package and coming over and having all that in that same location.
Mm-hmm. Over at the right-hand side, we've got our model tree, just like we had in 2020. And with that, I'm going to move on and let Aditya talk about roles.
So let's talk a little bit about user roles and their history. In 2020i and previous versions of SDS2, we have always had what's called a toolbar configuration file. And these files would consist of keyboard shortcuts, right-click menu or context shortcuts, as well as the toolbar layout itself on the modeling and other windows. During the course of production, a user of SDS2 typically has a set of tools that they will make use of, and once they're done with those project phases, they probably are never going to go back to them. So a good example of this is, let's take any typical project. The first thing that you would do is probably lay out your construction lines or start laying out your views and things like that. And then once you're done with it, the second phase that you would get into would be about actually adding members. And then you might decide that you want to go create reports or do connection design and stuff like that. So what we have tried to do with this reimagination of the SDS2 UI is to target those specific roles, as we call them, and allow users to mix and match their keyboard and shortcut configurations to match those different roles within the same UI. In 2020 and older, you would have had to create probably your first set of keyboard configurations and shortcut menus as a toolbar configuration, then go copy it out into a bunch of them. It's a whole tedious process, and we've taken that away and we've made something even better. So let's start with the creation of a new role from 2020, right? So this was already covered in our previous webinar, but I'm just going to go again on it. Start by typing convert in your utilities screen in the tab on the home screen. We now have a new option called convert classic keyboard and shortcuts. What this does is allows us to extract from your older toolbar configuration your keyboards and your shortcuts. So these are probably familiar to you. They are the names of our old toolbar configuration. Let's say I want to take something out of my modeling 2021. So select it, and I get a window that says that I can extract several keyboard configurations and shortcut menu configurations from it. And if I hit OK, it's going to extract from those classic toolbars your old keyboard configurations and old shortcut menu configurations. And they will then be available for use with the new Lightning configuration in SDS2. Just to give you an idea of where they're located. So let's go take a look. It will be, here we go. So you are familiar with where toolbars were located. It's in this location called, in your data directory, a place called toolbars. You had modeling and all of those other ones. But also now in the data directory, we have this location called keyboard configurations. And again, you will have a modeling and other keyboard configs over here. And at the same time, you also have a shortcut menu configuration folder. So we've just split apart the toolbar into those two locations. And the reason for doing that is to allow you to mix and match those configurations with your Lightning layout. And you mix and match that via what's called the customize interface screen. So before we dig too deep into to customizing it, let's make sure we understand what we call a role. A role is a collection of keyboard configurations, shortcut menu configurations, and ribbon configurations. So in this case, in SDS2, I will show you an example in a moment. Let's just call it detailer, all right? Now, maybe you have a slightly different set of ribbons, but not a different set of keyboards and shortcut configurations, and make use of all of that in another role called modeler. And maybe you have something completely different as a drafter. The point is, you are mixing and matching the set of tools that you have in SDS2 with your choice of keyboard and shortcut configurations and collecting them into what we call a Lightning role configuration. In this case, that is called default. So let's talk a little bit about how you customize each of those things. Inside of the customize interface window, we have a role name. In this case, that is the detailer, a collection of those roles, and so you can have the same name across different stations, or environments. So I'm talking about the modeling, assembly editor, EVU detailing. They can all still have the same name, but they are different for each of those environments. And by 2021i general, you will also have the rest of the interfaces, like drawing editor also included there. So we have a ribbon configuration file. We have a keyboard configuration file, which you can now choose one of those extracted files from earlier if you're one of our existing users. Otherwise, we ship a whole set of defaults that are built out of what we shipped in 2020i. So you can edit your keyboard configurations directly from here. So once it opens up, this screen is the same as what it has always been. This, again, is down to that transitional product we've always been talking about. And we also have the context or the right-click menu editor. It's not changed in any way other than the fact that it now saves into individual files that you can mix and match using this customized interface screen. Once you've finished adding all of them or removing whatever you want, you can save it off as a role configuration. And I'm going to hit OK and then show you the user and site options location. In user and site options, you now have modeling layout style, and eventually in 2021i, you will also have a drawing editor layout style. And you can choose between Classic and Lightning. Classic being the old toolbar specific implementation that was in 2020i and older. Again, the reason why we have included this in this version of SDS2 is really to help you transition and give you a learning grace period to switch to the new UI and help you maintain your productivity throughout this time. So over here, as you can see, it says Lightning role configuration and it says default. And that is a collection of these roles. And if you had multiple of them in your data directory, you can now come and edit them and select the one that you want. Once you've selected your roles, you get into modeling, and this is where you see the fruits of your labor. Again, you don't have to do any of this with what we do with SDS2 because we already ship with a default role, and we've spent months on this. We've looked through every single tool that we have inside of SDS2. We have taken the effort to placing those tools in what we think or what we feel is the right location for those tools. And this is based on decades of user experience, not just in-house, but also external as well. So just to give you an example of how to switch between these roles, we have something called a role switcher, and that lets you quickly swap out the tools that you have visible in your ribbons for the task set at hand or the role at hand for this phase of the project or for this particular day in your detailing world. So for example, I just switched from detailer to review, and the list of tabs that I had over there have changed a little bit. There obviously will be some overlap, but these tools are different from the set that you would find with, say, a detailer. So if I go back in drawing, you can see a bigger tool set. And all of this, by the way, is completely customizable. You can go into what's called the ribbon editor, which I will talk about next. You will be able to actually go in and modify these ribbons to your heart's content.
And that's really nice that you don't have to exit out and come back in to have it apply.
Right.
But like where the sausage gets made is really in the ribbon editor. Can we see that?
Sure. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about next. So inside of modeling or from the main menu, you now have the last item on that list is customize. You can either click on that or you can go into your main menu. Under utilities, you have customize interface. They're both the same screen. So I think let's just open it up from here. So when I click on customize interface, we spoke briefly about this, the list of roles and the environment that you can change. We talked about the keyboard and shortcut configurations, but now let's concentrate on the meat of it, which is the ribbon editor itself. So you can edit a ribbon configuration from right here. And what it does is it opens up a ribbon editor. Here we go. This screen is a what you see is what you get editor. So what that means is that you have a visual representation of the final ribbon, and you can keep making changes and see what it looks like. So let's take a look at some of the elements that we have on the screen over here. First, we have tabs that go across the top. We call them pages. Then inside each page, we have sections. So view grids with a separator, navigate with a separator, layout with a separator, UCS. So those are sections. And within them, you have regular tool items as well as drop downs, or drawers. So if I click on it, you can see that it will actually let you add items in drop downs. This is similar to the old flyout system that we had with SDS2, with the difference that it is completely customizable. It's no longer limited to just a subset of tools the way it was with SDS2 2020. I believe you had a handful of them, like drawer of drawing tools.
Right,
was
or
what it was
member
called.
add drawer. Now you can
Yeah,
control that, which is huge.
yeah. I mean, that's another step towards an insane amount of customizability that we've brought with this particular installment of SDS2. You can also decide that you don't need to see all of the items in that section at once, and it can go into an overflow section, and that's like another menu type drop down from which you can keep selecting stuff. So that's the different pieces of that of the ribbon itself. Let's talk a little bit about how to make changes to it. This section over here, the menu item search and the menu item group, should be familiar to our existing users. It just gives you our categorization of all of these different tools. And so let's say I want to go into process and I have something in here. All of these tools have always existed in SDS2. They've always been in exactly the same spot for the most part. And now you have the same search functionality that you always had with the toolbar configuration. You search for the item, and you click on the little plus next to it, and it adds it. In this case, because view was limited in the number of spaces I have, it's gone off into an overflow section. But I can change that. So on the right-hand side, I can change the name of my section if I wanted to, just changing it for the sake of it. That's changed the name of the page itself. I don't care about that, so I'm just going to undo it. I don't want to save something like that. This is my production thing after all. Section itself, so that's just everything within the separator. So if I want to change that title, I can. If you don't want to see the title, you just want to see the tools, fine, you can do that. That's a way for you to actually minimize vertical real estate if you want to. And also you have complete control over the number of columns or rows of items that you see over here. So all of that's pretty sweet. And of course, if you have more items than you have rows and columns, it will go off into the overflow section. I'm going to add my title back. Then individual items, you have more control than you ever have in the past. Earlier, I believe you had to go into your toolbar configuration. You would be able to see a 32 pixel variant, a 64 pixel variant, as well as plain text. And you had to drag and drop the one that was actually important to you in that particular instance. Now you don't have to do any of that. You just have to select the item. You cannot change the name, obviously, because it's built into the system. But if it were a custom tool, so certain custom tools let you specify that. You can choose how many rows you want this thing to span. So right now it's spanning 2 rows so that I can place 2 small ones next to it. But let's say I don't want to do that. If I reduce that, now it's going off into a single span like that. You can choose for it to encompass more than one column as well. So let's say, for example, this one over here, if you click on the item over here, it automatically selects that tool. That's also a pretty sweet feature. I can change the column span to 2. So you see how it takes up 2 columns and the ones below it take just 1 each. So another small bit of customization. Going back to open view, I can choose to either just see the image, if you want to just see the label, or if you want to see both the label as well as the icon. Maybe you're in the middle of a training session and you want to see both at the same time. Great way to do it. You can come in here and change all of that. Images, you cannot change them for built-in items. I think you have custom launchers, which are a feature carried forward from 2020i, and you can choose images for that one. And you can choose whether you want to see a small image or a large image. Depends on the size of your screen and the kind of visibility that you want out of all of these things. And that covers it as far as the customization of this whole screen is concerned.
So I want to add something here, Aditya. This is really, really cool, and it is pretty easy to use. Just the other day, I did this because I like to have the anchor bolt tool that adds all the anchor bolts if you select a column rather than just the anchor bolt in the member. And it took me about a minute to figure out how to do it. It was much faster, and I can kind of hide it away into my drawer the way I want to see it.
Right.
It is really easy and intuitive, I guess is what I'm really trying to say here.
The biggest aspect of trying to, seeing those icons and moving them around is what you see is what you get. That's huge for me.
Right. And, some of our users are probably going to ask, when are we getting drag and drop? It's in the pipeline. We are thinking about it, but we need to first get this layout figured out. And the whole process of getting user feedback and imbibing it into the software is something that we have renewed our commitment towards. So send us feedback, tell us about what is concerning about it, what you don't like about it, what you do like about it. So sometimes constraints can help with productivity. That's just a fact. And with this new interface, one of the things we're trying to do is to make sure that everyone is aware of the tools that are available at their fingertips. And it's, to me personally, I prefer that over bringing over years of toolbars and missing out on items that were previously missing. And I will give you a great example of that in just a minute. Before we proceed into that, let's talk a little bit about drawers. This is an example of one. A drawer, we were talking about how you can completely customize it, but what I didn't touch on was the ability to see the most recent item on it. So if I drop this item down, it usually acts like a menu. And if I click on one of them, that becomes the active tool. And inside of modeling, I can just directly click that button instead of having to go back down and select another item and stuff like that. So I thought that's a cool little feature. I'll give a proper demo of it inside of the modeling window itself. Let's get back into the modeling window and take a quick look at the roles. This is an example of our most recent drawer. If you click, you can either choose to just click on the one item and you can start adding stuff, or you can do a drop down and select another item and make that your most recent item. So that stays up there. You probably also noticed while I was doing that, our contextual tabs came up. And this is an example of the locate contextual. For the round of 2021, this is not customizable. We are working towards figuring out what that looks like, but the message that we want to get out with SDS2 2021 is that any contextual that we put out there, even though it's not editable, will provide you with every single tool that you could possibly make use of for that particular task at hand. So if I select a member, this member assembly is going to show you every tool that is going to be available to the user for interaction with a member assembly. That is the purpose behind it.
Something else I wanted to point out is as you were clicking those curved grid lines on that left-hand side, the quick access bar, those recent commands were showing up.
Right. So that's a great example of the history. The history itself is limited to just 5 items, but you can pin as many of them as you want. And that will be demoed in the next slide. So let's talk about commands and tools, and I will hand off to Steph.
All right, Aditya, thank you. Understanding the commands and tools, and I know Aditya has touched on quite a few items there with the ribbons. Michelle's going to be touching on some more. But to start off with, I'm just going to briefly go through these here. In the modeling screen, we do have a new help icon in the top right-hand corner, and I am going to show this live real quick as well, but I want to point them out. We also have hover. So when you hover over an icon, it gives you a quick tooltip with a description, pin the command, and also a link with the help documentation. Something else I'm going to be touching on is the find command, which allows you to do a fuzzy search. So I'm going to go ahead and show those. Here, I'm going to bring up my SDS2 here. And in the top right-hand corner, again, there's that help icon. If you click that, it's going to bring up your help documentation. That was a request. Just a quick way, instead of having to either hover over an icon or going to anywhere else, open up the help menu from there. Okay, something else that I talked about was the hover. So if I hover over an icon, it tells me not only the command name. So as you're learning those new commands, this again helps you understand what they are. Oh, I'm not sure what this new command is. If you haven't looked at the icon cheat sheet, you can hover over it. It'll tell you the command name as well as a short description. You'll see right here, you have that pin to quick access. That was that quick access bar on the left-hand side that we were just talking about. If I pin that there, it's going to show up right over here. If I want to unpin that, I could just hover over it again and unpin that. And then you have that quick link to your help documentation. So if I click that, it's going to open up the help documentation to that command. And lastly here, I'm going to talk about is the find command, which I think this is the most awesome thing ever because I have a difficult time finding commands, whether it was the old style and people want to use the classic, whether it's the ribbons. I want to be able to come in here and go, okay, I want to change my member type. I can type in change member and it's going to come up with member change type. Notice I didn't have it in the exact order. That's our fuzzy search. And it's going to tell me the text and the icon that's associated with it. So it's a good way for you to see and associate that icon with the command. From there, I can go ahead and launch that command and it continues to run. You'll see down here in our information bars telling me to select members. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. Maybe if I wanted to search for something else, maybe it was BMAD.
Yeah, you would also notice that it showed up on the left in the history area.
Yes, that's a very good point. Just like we were talking about with that curved grid earlier, again, this shows up in my recent command because I ran that. So those are 3 options that are the help icon, the hover options where it tells you about the command, and then the find command. Huge, huge things. Huge things to help with productivity and quickly finding what you're needing.
How many of you users have had to support other users and have had to say, okay, go find this particular icon that's located here on my toolbars, or go to this menu, drop down, go here, go there, find that command. Instead, now you just find the
Type it
command.
in. That's right. It's awesome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hand this over next to Michelle.
All right. So what we're going to go through here is using some of these commands and tools. So I'm going to talk through mouse bindings, showing you the new, Steph's going to kill me for saying this, left-handed version of SDS2.
Yes.
And how you can change the number of buttons on your mouse. Explain to you why SDS2 is geared toward pre-selection, and that has to do with the contextuals. Show you some of the quick access functionality, which Steph just did, but I'm going to go back into that just a little bit, and then some things that we have added for model presentation. So we're in SDS2 now, and the first thing I'm going to do is start with some of the things that are in user options. So we're going to talk about mouse bindings and the model presentation stuff right now, because I can do it all in one shot here. So the easiest way to get to it is use that search bar and type in user type. It's so nice. It is so nice. So first of all, you're going to watch me do some magic here because I'm going to run SDS2 left-handed.
Woo!
So I can turn on left-handed bindings representations for your mouse. You can also do the 2, 3, 4 buttons for your mouse and add that keystroke for the back button. Is that what you do that, Aditya?
I think so. Again, I don't have 4 buttons on my mouse. I have 15.
Yeah, I think you're correct, though.
Okay.
I do believe you're correct.
And you can set up the button bindings indicator to reflect your left or right-handed preferences. But I'm going to leave that mostly alone there. But while we're here, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to go over to the modeling. Steph stole my thunder in the first presentation. I'm going to change my modeling font. We'll call it
Comic Sans. Let's go Comic Sans.
Oh my gosh,
no.
I refuse to put that on a screen, did you? We'll do Microsoft Sans Serif. And then I'm going to come into my color palettes, and you can see right here in the background I'm in a light mode. So I'm going to go to my dark mode presets. And so what that does, we've got a light mode and a dark mode now that will change your font colors, your line colors, either to a dark or a light palette. So I'm going to hit OK there. This is not the same as dark mode for the actual user interface. That's a future thing, but you can see that we did change the color background right there, and I didn't have to exit out to do it.
Woo, nice.
Now, you don't see any fonts up, so I'm going to use my search tool and do my display options. And let's turn on my piece marks and numbers.
Why should we even bother with the ribbon? Just give search for everything.
I know, right? So you can see I've got a new font. It's not the SDS2 font. And you can see that show up here in the model. So those, I've got a lot going on there. I don't like that. But I can go over to my pinned or my recents area, get back into my display options, turn off member numbers, and just see my piece marks. That'll look a little bit better.
Nice.
So you can see I've already fallen into the habit of coming here to learn, either I've used it recently or to learn what some of the icons are. So if you want to open up a new view, as you're learning that, then that's going to show up in your toolbar. I use Surface a lot, so if I want to use my Surface command, that'll show up in my toolbar, and maybe I want to pin that. So if I hover over it, I can pin it to my quick access, and it's going to show up here at the top. Now I can pin, I'm going to hate myself for this later, but I can pin as much as I want to here. So if there's stuff that you use constantly and don't want to go looking for it anywhere, you can definitely just pin it to your quick access bar. So the
Right.
customization there is really useful, I think.
Right. And just to point out again, history is limited to 5. 5 is your magic number for history, but pins are unlimited, and that's reflected throughout the software.
Right. So we did our fonts, we did our background colors, we did quick access. Let's talk about tiles. So this is a really nice way to navigate through the model. This guy up here will lock that as my active toolbar, so I could actually go in here and say, okay, in this one, I'm going to go to 112 foot, and maybe I'm going to come over here and I'm going to add a beam. And where's my beam at?
Type in the word M, add the M, type more in there. As you type, it continues to filter.
Right.
Remember, add beam right at the bottom.
There we go. So I'm going to drop this guy in, and I'm just going to pick some points here.
Notice the locate toolbar that showed up over there.
Oh, yes.
I mean, that's the quick access, and then you have the locate tab, which is the contextual thing that showed up on the top.
Yes. So I added a really big beam there. If I turn it to solids. So you can see that big guy went in there. If I go back, I can edit it. That'll take me to my actual edit screen here, and I can drop it to a 12 by 22, we'll say. But what's nice is you can see that coming in your 3D. You can model in 2D, so you can kind of get the best of both worlds. While that's locked, I can't kind of flip back and forth between the two. But I can split these as many times as I want to and move between them, or I can use the X to clear them all out. Nice. And then as I was working, you can see this is filled up with the 5 most recently used items in the recents area, and then these are my pinned ones that stay static. Okay, so last thing, we talked about SDS2 being very based on pre-selection. If you see that I selected that beam I just added, you can see that my contextual toolbar showed up here. So that gives me all the tools. Okay, it knows I've selected a beam, that's a member. What do I want to do with that? Do I want to add material to it? Do I want to create a drawing? Do I want to use certain other tools? So that contextual toolbar, if I deselect it again so you can watch that happen, will pop up. And that is dependent too on how you have your filter set. So maybe if I'm selecting material instead, I've got a different contextual toolbar that shows up basing on what I'm selecting. So one last thing here, I'm going to pre-select this guy again. I've got this contextual bar that's shown up, and this is an option. If you don't want it to snap to this contextual toolbar and you want it to stay wherever it was, that is a user option that you can select as well. But the last thing I'm going to mention here is the toolbox. So when you download certain items from our toolbox, it will give you another page here on your ribbon to allow you to do additional toolbox features, or basically run those items. So in this case, if I want to dimension members, just a simple tool to throw that dimension on there. You can see we've got some for the EMI handrail export, a Zeman export, a Strumis, AGA, the galvanizing export is on here as well. As well as a few others, the Bid Wizard export, and those continue to grow as we continue to add items to that toolbox.
And just to point out, those are just tools. The members are going to be under member add, and the components are going to be under component add, but those are just the tools.
Right. So yeah, if I pre-selected this and put a component on it, I'll see my component add, and maybe I just want to add.
And those will just show the ones that are available for beams.
Correct. So you can see I've added nailer holes to that beam in this instance.
Is that a fact? I didn't know that it was actually dependent on selection for components.
Oh,
wow.
Yeah, I gotta teach you something. All right.
You learn something new every day.
Yes.
And that's the whole point of this interface, isn't it? Just to get people to understand that there are features that have always existed, and you need to make use of
Correct.
them now.
We've done a lot of updates. We highly recommend that you guys go to the support area. There is a support resources page that has a lot of information, has, the different cheat sheet that's been talked about in the previous session. It's got the how-to articles, it's got videos. I mean, I understand that existing users haven't been used to looking on here, but we're constantly, and they've been, the marketing department and the support department, they've been really adding a lot of content to this. Please check it out. You'll really be happy with it and thankful that you did.
All right. So I think we'll open it up to questions and let everyone kind of get started, and we'll start answering. All right, guys. So we got a couple questions that have come up here. While we read through these, though, we also set up some polls for everyone to answer for us here. So I'm going to ask Laura, she's kind of our handy background expert, to help us with starting the first poll. And Stefana, did y'all read off one of the first questions here for you guys? You guys did answer this in the text, but I'll read it out for everyone to hear. Will the classic modeling layout style be phased out in the future, or will the classic toolbars be phased out in the future?
Right. I can answer that question. Let's understand again from the previous webinar, we did mention that SDS2 is moving to a brand new technology for our underlying user interface. And it is important that you understand we need to rebuild the entire modeling window from scratch. And we are not going to implement two different versions of the user interface. What we need to do is to get a lot of feedback from our users and create a final user interface that makes sense for everybody. We need to think about new detailers. We need to think about existing ones. And that was the intent behind providing you with a Lightning and a Classic switch in your user options. You have time to learn it. We can probably debate maintaining it beyond 2021, but we really should concentrate on understanding that we're not going to actively develop anything for the Classic toolbar system anymore. Sure, you might be able to add tools that show up in the toolbar configuration, but we are not going to enhance it in any way. We're not going to add any more features to the old Classic method. We are concentrating on Lightning, which is an evolving product. It is something that we will be taking your feedback into consideration and building something new that works for everybody. I hope that answers your question.
All right. Why don't we close this poll out? It looks like the answers were kind of slowing down there. And can we show that, Laura? There we go. Or can everyone see this?
Yes, I think everybody can see this.
Okay.
The answers here. Consumes the most time. Cleaning up drawings is 57%.
Yes. So not that I'm happy to see that, but I'm happy to know that some of our plans here for the next year will help address some of that.
Yes.
So excited that we have kind of the next phase of development going in the right direction there. Right. So let's open up the next poll while we take another question.
Okay, one of the questions was, can I import my old toolbars to Lightning? Yes. In the previous session also that we talked about how you can convert, both sessions actually, you can convert your toolbars and bring them forward. Your Classic toolbars that you used in 2020 can be used in Classic and SDSU 2021. You can also convert the keyboard and shortcuts to be used with ribbons.
If they mean that, I just want to point out, just to clarify, if you mean, can you bring forward the same set of buttons that you have across the left, right, top, and bottom of your old screens from 2020? The answer is no.
The answer is yes, actually, with Classic. You can
with
still
Classic,
bring,
yes.
Yes.
You cannot bring it into the Lightning mode.
Correct.
Right. So if you want the ribbon-based implementation, you do not have, it's not compatible with each other.
Just your keyboard and your shortcuts are.
Right. However, that being said, I just want to mention that between the ribbon implementation across the top, as well as the quick access on the left, you can recover maybe 80 to 85% of it, what you had in the old interface. It's just that you'd have to create it from scratch. So, yeah.
Okay. And let's let that next poll go just a little bit longer. I think about 63% is voted there. So I'm gonna just go to the next question. When extracting a toolbar, what happens with the buttons created in-house?
I'm assuming they're referring to the launchers, because you can create custom launchers which point to a, whether it's a parametric or whatever, those can still be added.
Yeah, so if you go into customize interface on that screen there, Laura, you'd be able to see. Yeah, I guess we did gloss over that fact, but if you open that up, you have a launcher manager that you can see right in that window. So select one of those, and next to the environment, there is that launcher manager. That's the same as the old one that existed in the past. And you can create your custom buttons and everything and add them to the ribbon exactly as if it was something that was built in.
All right. Laura, why don't you throw those poll results up from the last one? So what's your time frame for adopting SDS2 2021? Looks like the majority is in right away or 1 to 3 months, which we love to hear. We're excited for our 2021 I release this summer because we aim to have rolled out more UI updates in that version as well. So for those that are maybe on the 3 to 6 or more than 6 months, just know there's going to be more great updates coming here this summer. So let's open up the next poll and then we'll jump to the next question, which was,
We should do that one.
Does the pin side add columns if it fills up?
No, it does not at this time, but that's an interesting ask. Again, I do want to ask, what the more number of icons that you keep pinning on the left, your findability is going to go down. That's just, it's a wall of buttons again. You're getting back to the same UI that you used to have. And why do you need to clutter your left-hand side when the buttons show up for you at the time you actually need it? It's fewer items to search through. And especially when you're talking to each other, trying to help each other find things and everything, it becomes problematic. Go to row number 10 on column number 15. It's a problem. And that's really what we're trying to address here. Try to not do that. Try to make use of the interface as it was intended and give us feedback on it rather than trying to recreate what you used to have.
Okay, I'm gonna ask this next one too. Does the beam add command no longer automatically open up the beam dialog window? That's actually a setting. In the demo, I was using the quick add toolbar, which adds a toolbar along the top that only has like your section size, your elevations, your connection types, a couple other options there, but it's meant to just narrow down what you see while you're inputting beams and columns or bracing and streamline the process of getting those materials in. But it is just a setup in your user options if you want to turn that on or off. Let's close this poll here and see the results of that. So what do you think is going to take you the most time to learn? Ribbons, probably the clear winner there, I think.
Right.
Yeah, actually, one of the things that one of our users actually sent an interesting request for that one, and I think it's going to help. When you, let's say, for example, you're a brand new user, again, confronted with all of these ribbons and everything, I guess looking through all of the ribbons to find those tools is going to be problematic. But one of the requests that came through was about tying the find command option to the ribbons so that when you click on the find command or when you start typing and find a match, then the ribbon automatically highlights the item as it appears in the ribbon. And that it's kind of like a tutorial mode, so to speak. It's a pretty nice idea. And that's the kind of feedback that we're really looking for. I mean, so we are thinking about it. We are trying to figure out how best to reduce that learning curve, and we are getting some great ideas from you. So please keep the feedback coming.
Great. I think we have one more poll to open up while we go through some more of these questions. With the piece marks shown in 3D, sometimes the piece marks overlap. Is there a way to show an arrow to a piece mark?
I see what he's saying, or the person that asking the question is saying. I think it's going to be difficult though, because as you rotate, those piece marks could be jumping all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm not sure how that would lay out very well, because I mean, just think about rotating from a plan view to an isometric and just trying to get that position. You're going to have things jumping all over your screen quite a bit. I'm not sure how that would work. I understand the request though. I mean, just like you showed in your demo, everything was overlapped.
Right. Well, among other things, you do have control over the size of those piece marks and everything. So if you are in a crowded space, you can change your display scale so that they don't overlap as much, but you're still left with an overlap problem when you have a lot of them. And we'll have to think about it. We don't have an easy answer, although the suggestion to show an arrow is an interesting one. I just have to figure out how best to implement it.
I wanted to, somebody asked a question just a minute ago too, I wanted to bring up before we run out of time, but someone asked, how do I see these shortcuts, like your quick keys? We talked about the hover. When you hover over an icon, how it has the, your command name, your short description, your tooltip, and like a link. Inside there, if there is a quick key associated to that command, they will show up in there as well.
Right.
Let's see. So is there a way to modify mode configuration in Lightning mode?
I'm sorry, repeat that one more time.
Is there a way to modify the mode configuration in Lightning mode?
The mode configuration. Wonder if there's a specific one they're looking for. Right now, modes are not in Lightning mode.
Okay. So then for right now, maybe not, huh?
Yes.
All right. Will launchers be available for keyboard shortcuts again?
I think they always did exist in 2020 as well. Once you created your launcher, it showed up in your keyboard shortcuts. So yeah, that has not changed in any way.
Okay. Could they add an option in the quick add toolbar to reset all user modified settings so the new member goes in auto everything like when you first start the job?
So this is about the member quick add tool, the member add quick add tool. And they want it to be reset. Isn't that anyway just on a per session basis right now?
Yeah, it is. Could they have an option in the quick add toolbar to reset all the user modified settings? Yes. So I mean so he might be looking for a reset on the fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which would, we could turn that in as a request.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting
Let's
idea.
close this last poll here. So what's your primary reason for using seed jobs? To fill in your setup is the obvious winner there. Drawing standards, and then a few of you don't use seed jobs. And I don't know if, Steph, you want to talk to the setup options and why this is of value to using a seed job?
Well, everybody knows that there's a lot of defaults there. I mean, settings and so on for job setup, project setup. I assume that's what we're talking about here, right? Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you want to set up your fabricator settings, your job settings, your dimensions, all of that information, and set that up with seed jobs. So that way, when you create your a new job, you can just pick it for all your defaults and start from that point instead of having to go through all of those settings again. And different fabricators use different have different requirements. So why not set those up for your fabricators you're working for as well?
Right. So if you have your subcontract detailer and you have maybe 4 or 5 fabricators you use or that you work with, having fabricator setups for those 4 or 5 fabricators saves you start time every time you have a project with them is the idea.
Right. So that's an area that we probably can improve on to make it easier to just make use of a seed job as a template as you create new jobs and all that. Seems like a good way to speed that aspect of it up.
Yes. There was a question earlier that I was just going to touch on here. If somebody wanted to see a quick demo of the EMI handrail export. We probably can't do that in this session, but any of you that you would like to take a look at any of the toolbox items that we showed on the toolbar, if you go to the SDS2 toolbox page, which is under support, you can subscribe to get the latest releases. So every time we have an update, you'll just get an email letting you know. But then you can also come here and watch the video on how that works. And that goes all the way from install to actual operation and export in this case. So just know that those resources are there for you. You can go back and take a look at those anytime you would like. But we did have a few more questions populate here on the bottom, so I'll jump back over to those. Any improvements for touchscreen usage, like long press radial menu in the workspace?
Currently, we have not done any improvements on touchscreen usage.
Yeah, but it goes back to that whole new UI technology thing that we're trying to switch to. The quicker we can make that transition, the more we can open it up to those bleeding edge enhancements that would really improve on those kind of interfaces. But at this point, we're still hamstrung, and we really need to keep going in the direction that we are and finish modernization of the modeling and the drawing editor windows next. So.
Okay. Have we about run up on time here, guys, or I'm not sure.
I think so.
Okay.
There's a. Can I stop there with? Can the top ribbon width be smaller without deleting icons?
Actually, yeah. So, for example, in the ribbon editor itself, why don't we edit this one straight away? No, I think they are talking about the vertical width. So actually the height, even though
I was expecting the actual width, like she was doing, not vertical.
Oh, okay.
Well, the ribbon width.
Okay, so let's show that anyway. Go back to what you had. If the width of your ribbon is wider than your actual window itself, you have a scroll bar that helps you go, okay, Grigori says that he's talking about the height. So,
okay.
Yeah, so if you go into customize, if you go into the ribbon configuration and click on edit, you have full control over the height of the thing. So if you would rather see just plain text or there you go. So let's go into, since you were on members, okay, let's do it here. That's fine. The first thing that I want to mention is that the way these ribbons are set up is that it takes the maximum height of all of your ribbons. So if there is a ribbon that has too much of white space, it's because some of your other pages have too many icons in the vertical distance. So let's say, for example, instead of having those two camera icons that are at the left or top and bottom, if you click on one of them, it now highlights the item on the tree in the middle of the screen. And as you can see in the right column, you have access to the number of rows and the number of columns. So if you reduce the number of rows to 1, yeah, you can see that it has 1 reduced that a lot of them in that location because you actually had several other items that were in 2 rows, and the overflow has gone into the drop down that is next to the views/grids location. That's one thing that you can do. The other thing that you can do is if you click on one of those camera icons again, yeah, so here you have the ability to either just show text, or in this, so there's a display option that says label and image. So with that, you can control a little bit more on the vertical side of things. So a user can have as many or as few rows as you want in the ribbon, and you can completely change all of that yourself and reduce it to even less than what it is right now. That's the level of customization that we have with the new UI. You're welcome.
Okay. Is there a place on the main menu that goes to the SDS2 website specifically for the help videos, etc.?
Under
So,
resources, click on technical support. And if you're referring to the new integrated navigation, that's, I mean, like if you go there and then go to 2021, then you'll see, or you can also go to getting started videos. There's lots of links. They're going to get you there.
There's the how-to articles.
Yeah, the interface and navigation videos also, if you're looking for those.
Mm-hmm. So there's quite a few videos that'll walk you through, like converting your toolbars, converting the keyboard shortcuts, kind of the home screen stuff, and just getting around the system to kind of give you an idea of how it works. And then the, Laura, if you can go back up. So that's just for internet. We've created a whole section for interface and navigation. Then we also have the same resources for just the newer features that are in SDS2 2021 as well. And so there'll be the how-to articles there. That'll be, you know, we've got some for lightning mode interface. We've got some for customized ribbons. We've got some for Perlin, so you can actually see how they work. It gives you some tips on how this all goes together. Okay.
I think we're, oh, go ahead.
There was one last one that popped in here. Could member add options bar be allowed to use edit member on a member that is already in the model instead of having to go into member edit every time?
I think John and I are of the same mind as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, I want that, and we are getting there. So yeah, absolutely. One of these days you will see the ability to just change properties on the fly. Not for this version, but yeah, it's definitely in the pipelines. So keep those nice ideas coming, and we'll get it in there at some point.
Okay. Well, great, guys. I think we've pushed our hour time limit here anyway, so we should probably sign off. Thank you, everyone, for attending, and make sure to be signed up for the rest of the webinars this week to show you some of the other new features in 2021.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.